Today we are looking at our practice 2. This is in Tabe Tutor Practice Book 1, and we are on lesson 2, so that's page 4 of the textbook or the workbook. And we're looking at rounding whole numbers. Before I start this lesson, I want to give you the rounding rule. And I'm not sure how your teachers have explained this, or even if someone has explained it, so I want to take the time to explain it the way I do it. If you already know this, you can just fast forward through this part of the video. But I teach my students to draw a hill. We call this the rounding hill. And at the top of the hill, let's put a line. Let's put the digit 5. 6, 7, 8, and 9. This is the roundup side of the hill. Then on the other side, you have 5 digits also. You have 4, 3, 2, 1, but don't forget about 0. So you have 5 on the roundup side and you have 5 on the stay the same. And then here's the important piece that a lot of students forget or don't know. We are talking about the neighbor here. And I'm going to show you how this works, but I want you to remember that this is the neighbor that we're talking about. So let's take a look at number 1 and we'll apply the rule. It will make more sense once you see it. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the round up side, and I won't highlight the stay the same. So this is the round up portion. If the neighbor is a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, we are going to round up, is what that's saying. So let's look at number 1 and then we'll come back to the rule. Johan runs an ultramarathon race that has a combined elevation change of 11,593 feet. What is the elevation change rounded to the nearest 1,000 feet? So here's how this works. I want you to take that number that we're given, 11,593, and it's to the nearest 1,000. So underline the thousands place, which is right there. I want you to draw an arrow back to this number right there. This is the neighbor, not the thousands place, the neighbor. So this is what I'm talking about when I say the neighbor. The neighbor is a 5. Neighbor is a 5. So look back up here at your rule. Sorry, it's going wild on me. The neighbor is a 5. So what are we going to do? We're going to round up. So come back over here, and here's how you round up. You don't bother the leader ever. You never bother the leader. Anything in front of that underlined place will stay the same. But the neighbor said to do what here? Round up. So this becomes a 2, and this rounds off. It zeroes out. So the estimate, and that's what this is called, it's an estimate. This is called the exact. The estimate that you and I need is C. 12,000 feet. What we're saying is that Johann's elevation was closer to 12,000 than to 11,000. And again, that's where that theory comes in. If this makes absolutely no sense to you right now, I want you to stop this video and contact your teacher before you watch the other parts of the video. If you're following what I'm doing, feeling pretty good about it, let's go ahead and go to number 2. Camille has a savings account with a balance of $15,499. What is the balance rounded to the nearest $100? So let's take the number that we have and underline the hundreds place. Then identify your neighbor. The neighbor is a 9. So look at your rule. If the neighbor is a 9, we're going to round up. So that means that this number goes up. So what we're left with, remember the leaders never change. So what's in front of the underlined part will stay. The underlined part rounds up, and then the neighbors round off. So you're at $15,500, and that is answer D. I would also encourage you to stop the video, back up, and watch this problem over and over until you're following it correctly, that you feel comfortable. If you feel confused, I want you to stop the video and contact your teacher. Number 3. Kelly writes a doctoral thesis paper with about 400,000 words. If this amount was rounded to the nearest 100,000, which 2 of these, please notice that, which 2 of these could be the exact number of words? So you and I are going to have to round each of these choices to see which ones round to 400,000. So let's do this slowly. Let's take our time. The first one is 340,780. And the place that we need to underline is the 100,000. So we're going to underline that one. Look at your neighbor. And this time the neighbor is a 4. So bear with me just a second. I'm going to try to clip this picture and bring it down here so I don't have to. That makes me seasick when somebody keeps flipping that around on me like that. So let's try something here. I apologize if I'm making you seasick. Here we go. Let's put our rounding rule right here where we can see it. So the neighbor is in the stay the same range. So what that tells me is that my underlined part is going to stay, and the neighbors all round off. So A rounds to 300,000. Okay, let's round B. B is 349 and 3. So let's look at the neighbor. Neighbor says stay. So we have 3 that stays, and everybody else rounds off. 300,000. C, I have 351,780. Look at the neighbor, and the neighbor says round up. So this will become a 4, and then these round off. 400,000. So C is one of them. C matches up to this 400,000. So we can go ahead and say yes, C is one of the choices. But remember, we have to find 2 of them. We're halfway there. Okay, let's look at D. We have 449,983. Look at your neighbor. Neighbor says stay. So I'm going to say 4, and everybody else rounds off. There's the other one. I'm going to go ahead and do E and F just because I want to practice with you how to do these. But if I were taking a test and I have the 2 that I need, I would go on to the next question. You don't want to waste your time working problems that you don't need to work. But because we're practicing, we're not doing a test. Let's take a look at these last 2. This one, the neighbor says round up. So the 4 becomes a 5, and then the neighbors round off. So that's more than the words that we're looking for. And then F, we have 499,000. That is almost 500,000. So if you look at the neighbor says go ahead and round that spot up, and then round off all the neighbors. So the 2 that are in that range that we're looking for are C and D. There are 8,760 hours in 1 year. What is the number of hours rounded to the nearest 100 hours? So 100 is the spot that we're focusing on. That's the spot that gets underlined. You look back at your neighbor, and then you apply the rule. The neighbor is in the roundup column or area. So that 7 is going to round up to an 8. Remember, anything in front of it stays just where it is. And then the neighbors after it round off. So the answer to number 4 is C, 8,800. Number 5. Humans shed about 2,200,000 dead skin cells every hour. If the amount was rounded to the nearest 100,000, which could be the exact number of cells? So the place that we're looking for is the 100,000 place, and we have to do this 4 times. So we have 2,150,121, and here is the 100. Let me do that again. With numbers this big, it's probably a good idea to put the commas. You may have noticed that I don't use commas a lot, and that's because there are 2 reasons. First of all, I'm dyslexic, and the commas get in my way. They get me confused. I also tend to see them as decimals if I'm not careful. So that's the reason I don't use the commas, but you can certainly use them if they help you. So 100,000 is right here. The neighbor is the 5. and then apply the rule. The 5 is in the roundup section, so we are going to make the underlined part become a 2. The neighbors round off, and remember, anything in front of the line you don't change. Okay, I'm liking that answer. But we need to check the others because it doesn't tell me how many answers I'm looking for. It could be 1, it could be more than 1. So on B, let's take a look at it. And we're still looking at our hundred thousands place. Neighbor says round up. So we're going to make that a 3. All the neighbors round off. And then this is going to stay the same. Okay, C is 2,277,835. Neighbor says round up. So I'm left with 2,300,000. And then D is going to be 2,309,245. The zero's the neighbor. Zero's in the stay the same. So I'm going to leave that 3 alone. And then everybody else rounds off. And we are comparing to this number. So always go back and double check what you're comparing to. And you see that this is the 1. There's only one answer this time that matches back to that comparison. So the answer to number 5, the one answer, is A. Number 6. A high-resolution electronic screen has 786,432 pixels. What is the number of pixels rounded to the nearest 10,000? So you take that number that you're given, $10,000 is your point of reference, and that's the 8. So the 6 is the neighbor, and the 6 says to round up. So the 8 rounds up, the neighbors round off, and the leader doesn't change. So 790,000, the answer to number 6 is B. Pick out the information you need and use it. Number 7. Eva has a salary of $74,362. What is her salary rounded to the nearest $1,000? So 74,362. The point of reference is the nearest 1,000. That's the 4. The neighbor is a 3, and it says to stay the same. So we're going to leave the 4, round off the neighbors, and bring down the leader. 74,000. So the answer to number 7 is B. Number 8. Luke has about 300 million blades of grass in his lawn. If the amount was rounded to the nearest 100 million, which could be the exact number? They have to be kidding us. Okay, rather than write this out over and over, I just don't have the room. I'm going to do it right here on the numbers themselves. If you need to stop the video and copy those down, that's fine if you're not writing in your book. So if you need to pause the video, that's fine. 100 million is our point of reference. So let me zoom in here really closely, and I'm going to underline the 100 million spot. Look at the neighbor, and the neighbor says stay, don't round. So we're going to take this one, we leave the 2, and then we round off the neighbors. This rounds to 200 million. That's not it, because we're looking for 300 million. Okay, this one, here's your point of reference, there's your neighbor. Neighbor says stay. So you have again a 200 million. And I'm going to get a different color for each of these just so that I don't lose my place. This one, there's the spot, the point of reference. 0 says don't round, just stay the same. So we're going to keep our 3 and round off the neighbors. That's a possibility right there. And then finally, we have the 3, 5. So let's look at the 5, and that is in the roundup range. So this one would go up to 400,000. We're looking for the one that matches back to 300,000. So our answer for this question, number 8, is C. They're not asking us to round those huge numbers just to torment us. That helps you to see how the neighbors round out. It really helps you to think through this process. So even though I don't like those big numbers, I think it's important to work with those because that helps you learn about the number system. Number 9. Shaylin uses 12,504 feet of wooden boards to build her house. What is the number of feet used rounded to the nearest thousand? So we're going to take the 12,504 point of reference. Always make sure of that because that's going to change everything if you get the wrong point of reference. It is 1,000. So you look back at your neighbor and the neighbor says round up. So we're going to take the 2 up to a 3. Remember, it's this guy that rounds up, and round off the neighbors and bring down the leader. So the answer to number 9 is D, 13,000. It is to the nearest thousand. Number 10. A certain colony of ants had 3,892 ants living in it. What is the number of ants rounded to the nearest 100? So you take your number, you find your point of reference, and you underline that. Look at your neighbor and apply the rule. The 9 is in the roundup range, so we're going to round up that 8. So it becomes a 9. The two neighbors get rounded off and the leader stays the same. 3,900 ants. Answer to number 10 is B. Number 11. The moon is about 230,000 miles from Earth at its closest point. If the number was rounded to the nearest 10,000, which could be the exact distance from Earth? So again, I'm going to just work with the data that I've already got here rather than try to write these again. Point of reference is 10,000. So here, let me zoom in so I can write. There's my 10,000. Neighbor says round up, so that's going to become a 3. Let me just do it like this. These guys round off, and the leader doesn't change. Okay, this one. Point of reference 10,000. Neighbor says round up. So this one rounds up. These round off. And the leader stays the same. We should write a song about this or something. Point of reference. Neighbor says stay. So that stays the same. The neighbors round off. And the leader doesn't change. Point of reference. Neighbor says stay. Neighbors round off. Leader stays the same. So we've done our rounding. Let's look back to our comparison. We are looking for the one that matches 230,000. So the answer to number 11 is A. Number 12. The speed of light, nothing faster than the speed of light, is 607,616,629 miles per hour. What is the speed of light rounded to the nearest million miles per hour? Point of reference is million. Speed of light is 607, 616, 629. Remember, these are your units. This is the thousands section. This is the millions section. And million would be the 7. So get your place value right. You look over here at the neighbor, and the neighbor says round up. So this becomes an 8. These neighbors round off. And the leaders don't change. So I am looking for this rounded answer. The answer to number 12 is C. 608 million miles an hour. I drove to work at 50 miles per hour. So that gives you an idea of how fast light is traveling. And even with that in mind, it takes sunlight 8 minutes to reach us on Earth. Traveling at that speed it takes it 8 minutes. That gives you an idea of how far apart the sun and the earth are. And the sun is our closest star. So when you get into those numbers dealing with outer space, these very, very large numbers are hard to work with, and it takes a lot of practice. All right, I'm digressing. Number 13. Darnell has a problem with the engine in his car because it goes all the way up to 7,785 revolutions per minute when he drives. What is this number of revolutions per minute rounded to the nearest hundred? The device in the car that measures this is called the tachometer, and this is very high for most cars, revolutions per minute. Point of reference is 100. So we have 7,785. Point of reference is 100. The neighbor says round up. So that 7 becomes an 8. The neighbors round off. Looking at 7,800 revolutions per minute. That is a problem for his car, but not a problem for us to round. Number 13 is C. Let me get to my next page here. Number 14. I have a note that there's something special about 14. So let's slow down here. I'm not sure what it is. I don't have the answer, but I made a note that something's different. So there were about 7,500,000 people in the world in 2016. I don't think that's right. There were more people than that in the United States. I believe they meant 7 billion, and maybe that's what I had the problem. But let's go ahead here. If the number was rounded to the nearest 100,000, oh, here's the thing. Which 3 of these could be the exact population? Here's why I have a star around this one. Because this time we're going to have 3 answers. Okay. Again, I think that's supposed to be 7 billion people. In other words, they need another 3 zeros there because there were more people than that in the United States. Right now, I think the population of America is 320 million. So I'm not sure. I think that might be a misprint. We want to round this. What's the point of reference? The nearest 100,000. So let's come here to the first one. Here is the 100,000 place. And, sorry, the neighbor says stay. So 4. Neighbors round off. Leader stays the same. B. 100,000. Neighbor says stay. Leader doesn't change. $100,000. Neighbor says round up. Leader stays the same. Neighbor says round up. Leader stays the same. I'm running out of colors. Neighbor says stay. Round off. Leave the leader alone. And finally, which color have I not used? Let's do red. No, I used red. Blue. I'm trying to make this a little easier on your eyes, but there are a lot of things going on here. Neighbor says round up. Okay, so we want to match these back to this number, 7,500,000, and we're looking for 3 of them that fit. And right there they are. I have C, D, and E. I will advise you that they won't always be consecutive. In other words, they won't always be in order like that. You could have 3 answers that are spread out. So don't assume that they'll always be. I think the ones we've seen might have been that way so far, but that is not a given. Answers to number 14 are C, D, and E. Number 15. The Pacific Ocean reaches a depth of 10,994 meters. It's very deep. What is the depth rounded to the nearest 1,000 meters? So you have 10,994. The point of reference is the thousands place. For some reason, when I was in school, I got a little bit rattled if there was a 0 sitting there. But just treat it like any other number. If you look at your rule, there are 5 below and 5 above that midpoint. 0 is one of the ones below. But we're looking at the neighbor. And the neighbor says round up. So this is going to go to a 1, and these will round off, and this will stay the same. So I'm going to say the answer to number 15 is D. Number 16. The temperature at which diamonds melt is about 4,000 degrees Celsius. If the number was rounded to the nearest 1,000 degrees, which number could be the exact temperature? So the point of reference is 1,000. The point of comparison is 4,000. So let's do some rounding. Hopefully this is getting a little easier. Practice makes better. But in my experience, this is one of the hardest things for students in math. It's just a tough thing to grasp. So if you're struggling a little bit, you're normal. That is perfectly okay. Neighbor says you stay the same. Point of reference. Neighbor says you stay the same. Point of reference. Neighbor says you round up. Point of reference. Neighbor says you round up. Then you go to your point of comparison, which is 4,000 degrees. So the answer to number 16 is B, 4,000 degrees. Number 17. Randy drives 1,458 miles in a car. What is that distance rounded to the nearest 100 miles? So 1458, point of reference, 100. Neighbor says, round up, round off, and keep the leader. So the answer to number 17 is C, 1,500 miles. Number 18. Casey has 105,245 hairs on her head. What is the number rounded to the nearest 10,000 hairs? So point of reference is 10,000. That is the 0. Look at the neighbor, and the neighbor says you round up. So that 0 becomes a 1. The neighbors round off, and the leader stays the same. So the answer to number 18 is D. 110,000 is the estimate. The exact is the 105,245. So number 18 is D. Number 19. Brian has about $287,396 in his retirement account. What is that amount rounded to the nearest $1,000? So I have 287,396. Point of reference is 1,000. Right there. Look at the neighbor, and the neighbor says stay. Neighbors round off, leaders stay the same. So the answer to number 19 is A, $287,000. And finally, the inside of a castle measures 387,945 square feet. Which sentence is true? So you may be thinking there's no point of reference in that problem. And you're right. It's because the point of reference is in the answer. So do you see what they're making us do? We're going out with a bang here. Each of these, well, actually not quite each of these, because these are both to the 10,000s. So we're going to have to do some rounding to make sure this comes out the way we want it to. So let's take this first one. I'm going to bring the actual dimensions of the castle right down here. So 387,945. And this is to the nearest 100. So you look at the neighbor. Neighbor says stay. Leaders don't change. So 387,900, and here's what you want to compare. You want to compare this number to this number. And are they the same? No, they are not the same. So this is not the answer. Okay, this one we have to compare the castle's actual square footage with a point of reference at 1,000. Neighbor says round it up. Okay, so we are going to compare this number to that number. Do they match? No. That's not the answer we're looking for. Bring your castle dimension down here. So we have 387,945 to the 10,000s. So that's this number right there, the 8. Look at your neighbor. Neighbor says round up. So I am comparing this number to this number. Do they match? No. But this one is also to the 10,000, so let's compare this number to this number that we just found. Do they match? Yes. Here's the yes. So the answer to number 20 is D. What a lesson on the rounding rule. If you have any questions at all, please contact your instructor and he or she will be happy to help you with this skill. I will see you in the next video, which will be a lot less stressful. It's on adding and subtracting whole numbers without a calculator. So it's probably a review for a lot of folks. But I'll see you soon. Have a good day.